Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas. And today we're going to talk fuglies. Fuglies? You say, what's a fugly? That's a fucking ugly car. Now, some of the cars that have been made over the years have an appeal to certain people, and some of them are just plain fugly. And we're going to talk about some of those fugly cars right now. Now, one of the top cars on the list of fugly cars is the AMC Gremlin. How many of you remember that car? Oh, you got to be old like me to remember that. The Gremlin was a car built by the American Motors Corporation, and it was the answer to the Chevrolet Vega and the Ford Pinto. The problem is we're not sure they were looking at the right question. But I love the Gremlin. Even though it's considered ugly by many, it is a cool car, and I like it. Yes, Chuck, we'll get to the Aztec a little bit later. That was an ugly car. We've got people watching us here on Facebook, and for those of you listening on iCloud and iTunes, thank you for tuning in. You've made GAAS-Great American Auto Scene one of the top 100 car automotive-based podcasts in the country. And we're so glad you did. Let me try and straighten this out just a little bit. All right, we're number 92 on the top 100, so thank you very much. I'm not that old. Oh, you see him there, Rob. Anyway, so the Gremlin, that is considered one of the fugly cars. As a matter of fact, it's tops on the list. So we're going to take a look at some of them. Let me get this camera straightened out just a wee bit. There we go. It seems to be tilting down. All right, let's take a look at some more. Of late, the Porsche is now considered one of the fugly cars. That's right, the Porsche Panamera. Well, why is that considered a fugly car? I think it's a cool-looking car. But the auto experts say it is ugly. It kind of looks like a cross between a 911 that someone added 2 doors in the back and then filled it up with air and it went poof. So it's considered one of the fugly cars. Definitely a fugly car is the Toyota Prius. That thing is ugly. It is just ugly. What can you say? It's an egg that got cut up and sharpened up and you know what? And I don't know how these guys get these great fuel mileage. Whenever I'm driving on the freeway, those guys in the Prius just pass me like I'm standing still. Hi, Don. How are you doing this morning? Sam, how are you? First generation Panamera was fugly. The new ones are better. You're right. Sam Fiorani. He is definitely a car expert watching us today. Now, one of the cars, and I've owned 2 of these. I like them, but it's considered fugly by some people, and that is the Chrysler PT Cruiser. Now, that's one of the first retro cars that really took off and sold well. They are great little cars. They handled well. They were comfortable to drive in. Reasonably good gas mileage. Now, the early ones, the seats were shorter on the base. And the reason they did that was to give better legroom because the legroom is measured from the edge of the floor to the edge of the front seat. So they lengthened the seats in the later model ones, making them more comfortable, but they lost 2 inches of legroom if you go by the measurements. The car didn't change, it was still the same. But the PT Cruiser, now I had both the 4-door sedan and a convertible. They weren't all that bad. And I agree with Sam, I don't think they were ugly, but it makes the top 100 list. The next car on the list, let's see what that is. Well, the Nissan Leaf. Yeah. I mean, it's, what can you say? Nissan, guys, you make some quirky looking cars, and the Leaf is just one of them. Mark with George tuning in. Now, for some reason, these experts think the 1960 Buick and 59 Buicks were ugly cars. These things are gorgeous machines. They're great. They were good sellers for Buick back in the day. And they were great custom cars. A lot of guys in the custom industry look for these cars. They're hard to find. Next up, Well, this one wasn't even available in the U.S., but it's the Austin Allegro. Yeah, okay. I'm looking at it. It's fugly. Next one up. I like this car. It's the Ford Anglia. Yes, the Anglia, the second generation, or not second generation, but the 60s vintage Anglia. Very sharp lines. 1959 is when it came out. They had a slanted rear window, much like the American Mercury's had. It's got single headlights. It's got one of those smiley grills. It's not ugly. It's kind of cool. And we'll take a look at some more here. All right, this one, it's kind of... Yeah, Chrysler decided the K platform used on the K cars could be used on a various number of cars, and they stretched the wheelbase, they lengthened the body, they changed the roof line, and they came out with the 1990 Chrysler Imperial based on the K car chassis. Now, I remember these cars. Imperials were top-of-the-line vehicles that competed directly against Packard, Cadillac, Lincoln. And then Lee Iacocca came in to save the company, and he did an admirable job, but one of the losses was the really distinctive and beautifully graceful Imperial. Next up, the Ford Granada. Okay, it's not a bad-looking car. It's not really ugly, but according to the experts, again, the 1975 Ford Granada was not a very good-looking car. You know, Sam, I'm with you on the K cars. I like the K car models. I like all the variations of them. One of the things I saw one time at a car show was the K car station wagon. Someone had narrowed the rear axle and tubbed it and put big tires in the back to make it look like it was a pro street car. It still had the four-cylinder and front-wheel drive, but hey, it was kind of campy. All right, here's a car that I have no idea what it is. I've never seen one before, but I can agree it is fugly. It is the 1957 Trabant. Now, this was a Iron Curtain car built back in the 50s, and it was basic transportation because basic is all it is. Experts, yeah, well, these are the guys from the automotive side of MSN. But I can agree with this. Trabant, not going to make anyone's list of, I got to have that car. Now, these guys, I don't know what rock they're hiding under, but they think the second generation Thunderbirds were ugly. That was a huge selling car. It's a graceful car. It's a beautiful car. 1958 to 1960, the Squarebirds. They replaced the two-seat Thunderbirds from 55 through 57, and sales more than doubled in the first year. The Thunderbird, an amazing car. Now, the Thunderbird chassis was shared with the Lincoln. Yeah, Trabant ran through 1990, and there were very few changes, and they really needed them, but they kept the cost down. The Thunderbird, I don't see a bad line on the car. Richard Candenhead says, I saw a lot of Trabants when the wall came down. Yeah, once the wall came down, then they escaped. All right, another K car gets on the list. This one, well, I don't know. Like Sam says, they were pretty stylish cars. They're saying the Chrysler 1990 LeBaron K car was ugly. No, it's boxy, but it's nice. 72 to 76, 80 to 82 Thunderbirds. I agree with you, Sam. Now, here's one that they say is ugly, and you'd have to put the whole family in this category because Chevrolet General Motors combined the Nova body into all brands. You had the Nova, you had the Omega, you had the Skylark, and you had the Pontiac Ventura. The experts from MSN are saying that the Oldsmobile version was ugly. No more ugly than a Nova, and they were good cars. Good-looking cars, too. So we're going to knock that one off their ugly list because it just isn't. Now, these guys have no clue what they're talking about. These are the experts, right? They're getting paid to put this stuff out. And I can't agree with them at all so far, except on the Trabant and the Leaf, the bad cars. But they're saying the 1959 Ford Fairlane was ugly. Really? That's a cool looking car. Try and find a good one now. Man. Someone trying to sneak in. The Jeep Compass. Yeah, that's ugly. I'm sorry. There is no redeeming value to the 2007 Jeep Compass. That thing is just, it reminds me of a bad Nash. All right, next up, the Dodge Charger from 1977. All right, it's not the best-looking Dodge Charger ever, and the body was shared with the LeBaron and the Cordova, and I don't see a problem with this car either. 1977. Now, these guys are out of their minds. They are saying the Checker Marathon was ugly. No, it was boxy. There's no question about it. They were the best taxi cabs ever. And then they made the consumer versions where you could buy a Marathon and you could cruise down the road in just the same luxury the guy in the yellow cab could. The body never changed. The Checker Marathon was the same from the time it was introduced until the time they stopped producing them. But these experts say they were ugly. They weren't the best looking cars in the world, but they're still cool. All right, here's one that I can almost agree with. Let's see what this thing is. It looks like a, it's a Hyundai Excel. When the Hyundais first came out, yep, they were ugly. They were utilitarian. They were basic. As a matter of fact, at the time, I was working for another car company, and I had just come back from Japan where we had written a new service manual for the new model car. Well, we had an exchange program with Hyundai to get their service manuals, and we sent them ours. I found the whole section I wrote for the other brand in the Hyundai shop manual, including the notes on the photos. How they worked on an Excel, I don't know. Hyundai's made leaps and bounds over what they were when they first came in the country, and they're not a bad-looking car. Now the Chrysler comes up on this ugly list for them, and they're saying the 1977 LeBaron, which was based on the Volare platform, not the best-looking car, but not ugly. Yes, Sam, Hyundai Excel, utilitarian, generic. When you saw the pictures, you'd say they were ugly. All right, after you get into the pony car era, I really don't have a problem with any of the pony cars that were produced. But Ford Mercury started increasing the size of their pony cars, and one of the most lackluster Cougars was in 1971. Ugly? No, not really. Just not exciting. Now, these guys, again, I'm going to blow these guys out of the water. They have no clue what they're talking about when they call a car ugly. The Jaguar XJS. I think that is one of the most graceful closed Jags produced. And I love those cars. Now, to own one of these Jaguars, though, you have to have a spare car in the garage for parts. Ugly? No. Reliable? No. These guys are picking on on some of these cars that are just, I don't know. Maybe I'm off. Well, a lot of people say I am. The Marlin, the AMC or Rambler, depending on what year you bought, Marlin. This was a fastback full-size car. Now, the reason it was a full-size car is because the president of AMC at the time thought the Tarpon, which was the concept vehicle based on the American body, was too small. You couldn't sit upright in it if you were 6 foot tall in the back seat with your hat on. The heck was this guy thinking? The Tarpon, based on the American, would have competed directly against the Mustang, the Barracuda, and the Camaros. And they would have been ahead of their time because they came out in 1964. But instead, he put it on the Rebel body style at first, which actually it wasn't a bad looking car. And I liked it. As a matter of fact, I had a chance to get one a few years ago, and I'm sorry I passed it up. Ugly? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Cool fastback. Now, as far as new SUVs, the GMC makes their list. It's not ugly, it's utilitarian, it's quirky, it's okay. Dar Hawthorne's just tuning in and saying, ugly for sure, Oldsmobile Silhouette minivan. Yeah, the 747's on wheels. All right, here we go. Sam, just like you said, the 1972 Ford Thunderbird missed the mark. Cadillac came out with, when they went to front-wheel drive, came out with the Coupe de Ville, and as a front-wheel drive car, it really didn't go over well. 1986 Cadillac Eldorado, it's not Coupe de Ville, Eldorado, not a bad-looking car, but certainly not something people aspire to own at this point. 1959 Oldsmobile. Really? A bad-looking car? Well, it's got the rocket features. I mean, the kind of modified fins, dual headlights up on each, quad headlights. Wasn't a bad-looking car for 1959. All right, this one definitely tops on the list for me of ugly cars, and that is another Nissan getting up there, the Nissan Cube. Really? It's a Cube. It's got that one-side wraparound rear window. It's got two windows in the rear door. It's strange. It's Nissan. Now, for a while there, Subaru changed the grille on their cars to make it look more like a horse collar or Etzel grille, upside down. 2006 Subaru Tribeca. Or Tribeca. Yeah. General Motors front-wheel drive Omega Oldsmobile. Not a real bad car, bad-looking car, but not a real good-looking car either. Volvo Coupe, the Bertone-bodied coupe. Looked like it had a chopped top. Ugly? No. Kind of out of proportion? Yeah. Plymouth Cricket. I don't think that was an ugly car. I think that was kind of a neat-looking car. And this was based on a British design vehicle. And it was kind of nice, 1971. The 1958 to 1960 Lincoln. These guys got to grab their ears and pull their heads out. This was an exciting, beautiful car. It is totally surplus and excess luxury at its best. A roll-down rear window, the angled roof, the canted quad headlights. Yeah, you're right, Sam, not the Bertone Coupe. That thing wasn't bad at all. But the Lincoln Continentals? Oh, no, there was never a bad-looking Lincoln Continental, especially the 1958 to 60. Those were exciting vehicles. Now the K car comes up. We're not even going to talk about that. This one definitely up on the list of fugly cars, and it earned its reputation as a fishbowl. But they're kind of cool. They're neat. As a matter of fact, people are really flocking to them if they can find them, and that's the 1975 AMC Pacer. That's right. The largest glass space in a single vehicle ever produced in two-door form. They had a station wagon, too. Even more windows. The Pacer was kind of a strange car. It was rather heavy. It was very wide. You could sit comfortably in this car. It rode very nicely, originally with a V6 or an inline six, later with a V8. They weren't too shabby. They were just strange looking, but they're cool. Yeah, I see a pattern to the thinking too, Sam. These guys don't know what they're looking at. All right, the Hyundai Tiburon. When it first came out, it was supposed to be the sport coupe to compete against all other sport coupes. The only thing it did was get you to and from with reasonable gas mileage. It didn't handle well. It kind of looked strange. It was too rounded, and it had funny headlights up in front. Yes, the Pacer did have a bigger door on one side, passenger side, so they can get in easier, I believe. Now, The K car, as I said, and Sam kind of believes or agrees with me on this, the K car became various models, and they put it throughout the line. They even made a Chrysler limo K car. Yes, they did. Was it ugly? It kind of looks like a shrunk limo for the guy on a budget. Next up, now this one definitely is kind of strange, but they've always made strange-looking cars, and that's the 1965 Renault 16. It is strange-looking. Is it ugly? By U.S. standards, I would go with that. By European standards, it's a good-selling car. A car that's out today, my neighbor's got one, and it is a joke. Juke. Another Nissan. And it is ugly. It is an out-of-proportion car. It's got weird lights up on top of the fenders. And it's just typical Nissan quirky. The 2004 Chevy Malibu was a utilitarian car. Not the most exciting looking car, but definitely not ugly. This car, by some, and my son is one of them, considers this car ugly. And that's a Bricklin, the SV1. And you know what? I'd like to own one of these things. Almost did before I bought one of my cars, and it was a toss-up between the Bricklin and my car and the Corvette I bought. I should have bought the Bricklin. The big Chevy Impalas that came out in 1991, these guys think they're ugly. I think they're kind of neat looking. Of course, the first ones came out with very small rear openings for the rear wheels, making it look somewhat reminiscent of the early Nashes from the 1950s. Ugly? No. The Ford Taurus. Not ugly. Not the most exciting car, but it was a utilitarian car. I agree, Sam. Not the Bricklin. Bricklins were cool. The Monte Carlo when they went front-wheel drive. 2000. Not an ugly car at all. This was cool. Who are these experts and where have they been hiding? All right, they're saying some Buicks here. Oh, this one definitely ugly. The Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It is ugly. It makes the Leaf look like a nice car, but this is Mitsubishi's electric vehicle, and it kind of looks like a golf cart with 4 doors. It really does. It's weird looking. But, hey, things are going to change for Mitsubishi because Nissan owns them now. Yeah, so much for keeping Mitsubishi alive. One of the cars that I kind of agree, it was kind of interesting, but it was kind of ugly because of its big headlight buckets, was the 1974 AMC Pacer Matador Coupe. Weird. Fastback. Big car. Didn't do too bad on the super speedways of NASCAR, just couldn't get the support that they needed because AMC wasn't into racing, and they proved it. 1957 Rambler cross-country station wagon, I think, is a gorgeous car. An epitome of what the 50s were. And these guys are saying the 57 Rambler cross-country station wagon is ugly. It is not ugly. It is pure 50s Americana. It is cool. Now, this one's kind of on the borderline, the 1956 Nash Ambassador. The headlights were in the grille, much like the Rambler I just talked about, and it was kind of Nash's last attempt at trying to stay in business with their product. The Nash body style and the Nash name went away very shortly after this, but they didn't have the money to restyle the car, so they kind of added chrome and doodads, and they wasn't a very good-looking car. But I'll tell you what, it had a lot of innovation inside of it. If you ever get a chance to look at a 1956 Nash, take a look at some of the innovative things that Nash was able to do back in those days. Okay, Cadillac Seville, the one with the bustle back. Ugly? No, not really. Different? Very much so. The last car we're going to talk about today, the Nissan B210B. Yeah, yellow and black. What happened was these cars came over. They were kind of a notchback version of the B210. B210 was a nice looking little fastback back in the day. But all these cars came over in these bright yellow paint jobs. Well, Nissan of North America didn't know what to do with these things, so they decided, well, we got to dress these up. They were baseline, basic cars, excellent transportation vehicles. And what they did was they put a bumblebee on it and put a stripe down the side. They sold every one they could as quickly as they came in. Ugly, quirky by Nissan standards. Well, normal by Nissan standards, quirky by everybody else's standards. Rebecca, how about the Lumina? Boring. All right, and this will be the last one. Honest, folks, this was a mistake by General Motors. It wasn't a bad-looking car. It just was a bad car in general. It was the Cadillac Cimarron. Cadillac decided to take the Chevrolet front-wheel drive compact car, dress it up a little bit, put some alloy wheels on it, and call it an entry-level Cadillac. Didn't really go over that well. Now, there were people that bought it because, hey, I can get a Cadillac and it's cheap. Yeah, it was cheap. And it proved its cheapness as it fell apart as you drove. Nothing serious there. All right, I'm Hot Rod Bob. We've gone over some of the world's most fuggliest cars today. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of this. Check us out on Apple iTunes, on Anchor FM, YouTube, and here on Facebook. I'm Hot Rod Bob with one of your top 100 automotive podcasts in the USA, GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene. Brought to you by Service Tech, the service equipment guys here in Southern California. They've got the equipment you need to work on the car you've got in the garage you have. You have a great day. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got GAAS, the morning edition. Have a great day, folks.